Richard Weylman, welcome to the program.
Well, good to see you and glad to be here, Nate. Thank you so much for the privilege.
Oh my goodness, yes. Well, you've got this fresh book. It's hot. It's so relevant, and what a wealth of knowledge for our listener to talk about these trends that are emerging in this consumer marketplace that you've identified when it comes to acquisition and retention of your customer. What? And your book is called 100 Proven Ways to Acquire and Keep Clients for Life. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, it really, we're a research-based consulting firm. I've written two previous books before this, both of which have been well received internationally. But about 2019, it was in the fall of 2019, we were in the middle of a consulting project, and we help a lot of professional organizations rebrand themselves. And I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, all different types of businesses. And one of the things we always ask about when we talk to their customers, we ask them, tell us about the service level that you're getting there with your, et cetera, whether it's an air conditioning company or a CPA firm or whatever, it doesn't matter. We want to know what the service level, how they would rate it. And people began to use a different word. We'd ask and say, so how would you describe the service level that you get with Dr. Nate? Well, let me tell you about my experience. I was like, and we kept hearing this. And the team said, my interns, and they were like, they keep using the word experience. And so then I began to make more calls. And I would say to people, tell me about the service level. Well, let me tell you about my experiences. And I said, so you're not really focused on the service. They said, listen, service is a minimum expectation. What we're worried about now is what kind of an experience we're going to have when they answer the phone, because that's where it even starts. And that was like an epiphany moment for me. I thought, that's the shift. People are going through a great reevaluation. Am I with the right? Pick one. CPA, hairdresser, dentist, doctor, just make a list. Political party. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of dynamics. So what people have decided is I'm going to reevaluate, the great reevaluation. Am I in the right place? And am I with the right fill in the blank provider? Now, that was in 19. And then we began to track it in 20. I was looking for expressions. We did Google alerts, which you go to Google and you type in words and it'll search overnight. And we'd get 17,000 hits in a week on the word experience on articles all over the world. And I'm like, and people weren't realizing that they were just using the word because someone had said, well, based on my experience. So it was crystal clear to me that this was the next big thing. So that's when I began the journey. And of course, the pandemic helped us all realize the importance of network and the importance of experience, and on it goes. All right. So fast forward. So I began to talk to people and I interviewed people and I partnered with organizations. And I asked them, I said, what kind of experience do you want? And what are you looking for from a provider? And if you're with that provider, what's it going to take to keep your business there? And when I was all done, I just made notes. I wrote them down. And then the good Lord just kind of spoke to me and said, now you can put this in a book. So I didn't want to write the book. We can talk about that later, but that's how it all started.
Interesting.
The whole
I,
process of
I,
that word kept getting triggered all the time. Experience. So
it's all
that's
about
what
the
the
experience.
genesis was.
You bet, man. And I'm glad you wrote it. I mean, here's the thing, man. That's a powerhouse, by the way, of a book. No, most books, 10, 20, I mean, 100. You've done your homework and framing it around this idea of experience. Reminds me of Peter Drucker. And of course, famously the father, if you will, of modern management, who said the purpose of a business is to not only acquire, but to satisfy a customer. And satisfaction has different connotations in different periods by the nature of what's happening around us. You talked about the pandemic, existential crises, man. So many people are like, hold on, hard stop breaks on life. I mean, 5 people who I know are no longer here anymore. I mean, I can't see this person. I can't do that. I can't even leave my house. And it's like this, as you said, this great reevaluation of what is truly meaningful, what is truly satisfying, what is going to be something that I am drawn to, that I feel an experience within. And that's not just like my social interactions. That's
Right.
everything in life.
Exactly right, Nate. And that's the differential, is that people today, as I said, I mean, service is a minimum expectation. If you go to McDonald's, I'm not a McDonald's guy, but let's say we went to McDonald's. I'm sure if the French fries are cold, they'll give you hot fries and make it good. So the reality is to tell somebody, well, you should do business with us because we give good service. Well, how magnanimous of you. Uh, you know, people, they can get service anyway. What people are looking for is an experience. And so when I wrote the book, and I really didn't want to write it. I mean, I really didn't, Nate. I mean, when I tell you I didn't want to write it, I mean, it was, I didn't want to write it. I had the idea, I was formulating in my mind, it percolated, and I was like, I'm not going to do that. I told my wife, I'm not going to write this. It just takes, it's, from your own experience, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Very busy. I'm speaking and consulting all over the world, and I just no. But finally, I just got up and I said in March, and I said to her, I said, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start this book. But if this doesn't come easy, I'm done. And 8 weeks later,
8 weeks later, you got yourself a
came
book.
out of the office, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, you're done, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "How many are there?" I said, "I have no idea." I just wrote till I felt the good Lord gave me all of the ones. I took all my notes and all what people had said. If you do this, then I'll do that. And if you do this, I'll do that. If you want to explain value, say it to me this way so I understand it. You say you're empathetic, but say it this way so I believe you're empathetic. All those notes over all those many years. She said, "Well, can I go in and count them?" I said, "Well, of course you can." And she was in my office for at least 15 minutes. And she came out and she was crying. And she said, "There's exactly 100.
It's a good number, man.
Well,
Hey,
what's interesting, I didn't set out to write. I had no number in mind,
yeah.
but to be able to feel the flow of the words and get it all out, as an author, all of us know from anything we do. When I wrote that last sentence, it was like, oh, I'm done now.
Well, let's just say a one for every year of your good long life ahead of you. How about
Thank
that?
you. Thank
Hey,
you. Amen. Amen. And amen.
so our listeners probably chomping at the bit. Okay, you know what? Number one, when we start to identify these proven ways, and we'll definitely open it up for ones that you really, I'm sure all of them are amazing, but there's probably some that are like you have to know this early on. Somebody listening says, okay, where do I start? Where do I start with the model for acquisition and keeping clients for life? And I have an idea where you're going, but I'm gonna open it up for you.
Okay. So first things first, for all of you that are listening, if you decide to buy the audiobook or get the hardcover, you'll see in there a reference where you can get the tools. There's an assessment tool to assess how you're doing on the experience right now already. And that's on my website. And you can go there and you can download it free. So you'll see the reference in the book. So you can just go there and download that tool if you want to sit down with your team and say, okay, let's figure out where we are in this whole deal. However, as CEOs, as leaders, as developers of people, the starting point for any acquisition today is to realize what people are looking for. And they're looking for 4 things. Now, full set aside, full transparency, competency is a given. Your business card says, we service air conditioners. I don't need to see your permit.
Right.
If you say you're a CPA, you don't need to break out the test scores. I'm believing you. Okay. So let's be crystal clear here. So we'll just set competency over here.
That's a foundation, right? It's not a
Yeah,
pillar,
let's
it's a
just,
foundation.
if you come tell me you're a chiropractor, I'm going to let you snap my back. We're going to be fine. Okay. But what are people then looking for? And then we ask that question, in addition to competency, what are you looking for? Overwhelming 4 things. And when I tell you overwhelming, also Salesforce did a lot of survey on this, over 6,000 people. Guess what? Same 4 words. People are looking for an organization and an individual that is thoughtful. It takes an extra moment and does something thoughtful. Maybe it's finding out how things went before, or how things are going, or what are you most excited about this summer with you and your family? Maybe if you're coming in to buy a car and they say, why do you want to buy a Lexus? You go, well, because I heard they're safe. Well, who do you want to buy it for? Be thoughtful and engage with people. Second thing they're looking for is someone that's kind. Kind meaning very simple. It's one thing to say, the men's and ladies' rooms down the hall to the right. You go to the third door and the fourth door on the left. You can't miss it. And don't forget the code if you forget to. No, it's walking them down and taking them there. Kindness is if they're in your building and the car's parked across the street and it's raining, you give them an umbrella with your name on it that they get to keep. That's kindness. So they want someone thoughtful and kind. They want somebody that cares, particularly an organization that cares enough to find out what they really want. Now you're a student, I think that'd be the proper word, Nate, of servant leadership. And I think Steve Jobs, I think if you really boil it down to where the rubber meets the road, or in his case, the technology meant the internet, what people don't realize is how they sold that iPad. But in talking to his first original head of sales and marketing, his comment to me was, Steve told us, let's not talk about the iPad. Let's show people and teach them and care enough to show them what they want to do. We'd ask them, what do you want to do? Oh, I'd love to see pictures of my grandkids. Let me show you how that happens. I'd like to, let me show you how. And they demonstrated they cared enough to take the extra mode, and we all know the rest of the story. So what do they want? I mean, somebody thoughtful, excuse me, someone kind, someone that cares enough to find out what you really want. Don't assume because you're 54 years old, you're in here that you probably want to retire and you need an investment account. We need to get this number away and get you in a mutual fund and see what kind of annuity you got. Now, maybe you ought to put the brakes on and say, what are you most proud of that you've accomplished in your life? Care enough to find out about the individual because everybody has a story. If I heard that once in the people I interviewed, I heard it 100 times. People would say, I just wish the salesperson would take time to find out my story, why I'm here. And then the fourth thing. So let's recap. We have what? We have thoughtfulness, we have kindness, we have caring. And the fourth thing people are looking for is empathy. See things from my perspective. Now, the problem most of us have, and I say most of us because we're all guilty as charged, the longer we're in any kind of business, we see the solution before they even know they got a problem.
That's right.
And so therein lies the problem with empathy. Because people they'll say, let me tell you what my situation is. It's very unusual. And you've never heard this before, I'm sure, Nate. And then they start down the road, you go, hey, I got it. Well, see, they want to be able to what? Believe you're on their side of the table. So 4 things people are looking for are kindness, thoughtfulness, caring, and empathy. And if you demonstrate those things, that's the bedrock of relationships.
Yeah.
And contrary to before the pandemic, when we're in a price-driven consumer society, relationships now drive revenue, nothing else.
And that, I love that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's gold. It's, there are things we think about, but yet there are things we haven't put together necessarily in that context with that order. And, as you're saying this, Richard, I'm a business owner. I've been in business almost 30 years. I get it. Same thing, right? You hit the nail on the head. Someone listening right now saying, yeah, I can tell someone what they want and how I'm going to solve their problem within the first 4 minutes of our conversation. But that's not the experience, right? That's the outcome. And so what happens along the way? I love how you framed it as a story too, because stories are a journey. Mm-hmm. And when you start framing this, these 4 parts as part of the journey. The first part of the journey, I really believe that thoughtfulness is saying, I see you, I hear you, you're important, I value you. And people today, more than I've seen in the last 30 years, deeply desire that. They're looking for others who can simply, and by the way, and I know this is something that is expected, genuinely and sincerely is thoughtful, not because it is part of your script, by the way, because people can see through a script. I don't know if you've ever gotten a phone call and someone was scripting and you're like, okay, yeah, this is just, you're checking off boxes. But there is, as human beings, intuitively, unless you're a master manipulator, and there are many out there, but generally speaking, I can tell, Richard, you can tell, someone listening can tell, hey, are you being genuine? Are you really genuinely thoughtful? And if so, then I'm getting the message that, you know what? the time that you're giving me, because you might not be a client, you might not be a customer, right? That thoughtfulness is really, it's in a way, it's a gift. It's a gift of your time to say, hey, you know what, this may or may not lead us to this particular outcome, but during this interaction, my responsibility, as you said, as a servant leader, is to shepherd those who are called to walk alongside of me through this journey. And you may or may not be that person, but let's thoughtfully have a conversation around that.
Yeah, well, you're right, Nate. And what I've seen, well, couple things. I speak at Oxford University, and they graciously gave me a dictionary written in 1827. And I was asked, anyhow, during a session there by one of the grad students that said, how would you define authentic? And I said, because we were talking about this very topic of authenticity. And he said, well, Professor, how would you, and I'm not a professor, but they call you professor when you stand on the stage and you look like one, I guess. And how would you define authentic? I said, well, I've been given a beautiful dictionary here by the dean. I said, let's look it up in 1827 and see what it says there. So I looked it up and it had authentic and it said in parentheses, see genuine. Mm-hmm. So I looked up genuine, had a 2-word definition, not counterfeit. I thought that was sort of brilliantly stated. And the whole room just went, it was just like, got it. So that's to your first point. The second point is, in a sales or marketing environment, when you talked about that people really want to feel that sense of connection, that you're not working from a script. Here's what we discovered. When you sit down, I mean, we can take any type of business you want, you can take accounting, financial services, even your hairdressers. But if you say, if somebody comes in and sits down in your office, your chair, your business, calls you on the phone, and just simply said, I need my air conditioning repaired here at the office, and we've got some things that are going on here. And you have a conversation and say, well, great. One of the things I love to do is our clients say that we really help them get their air conditionings running, so we're going to come out there and take care of that for you. But before we get to all of that, I'm just curious, how long have you been in that building?
Yeah.
Oh, we moved in here 11 years ago, et cetera, when I started the company. Oh, really? So you started the company yourself? Well, actually, I had a partner. And what happens is people start telling you their story. And here's what we found out, regardless of what business you're in. We ask people, how do you feel about it when a provider takes time to find out a little about what you're most proud of or what you've accomplished, what you're setting forth to do? You know what their answer was? I feel like I'm in the right place with the right provider.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with fixing anything.
Yeah.
Solving anything. It had to do with the fact that I felt like I was in the right place with the right provider, because that individual wanted to know more about me as an individual. And I have a situation right now in Northern California. This young guy is brand new in the financial business, 5 years, met with a very elderly couple, and guy in his 80s, wife in the late 60s, and took them out to lunch. They don't have a financial advisor, and they said, we're not, our son-in-law told us we ought to meet with you, but we don't want to, we're not moving any money to you. We don't believe in financial advice. He said, no, that's fine. I love what I do because my clients say, help them get their financial life in balance. He said, but I do have a question for you. What is the thing you're most proud of that you've accomplished here in the Valley? Oh, so the guy starts talking. And then ask him, what do you still want to accomplish in your life? You're 83 years old. And he kept talking. Well, tell me about your family. So anyway, they talked for an hour and 30 minutes. Then he said, well, frankly, he said, I'm going to tell anybody, but we just sold a piece of property. We closed this morning for $25 million. We sold it to a historic hardware. He said, I like you, kid. Mm. You care about people. How about I give you that $25 million you set up a trust for my grandkids?
Yeah, I love it. But you know what you're saying here is there must be a genuine sense of curiosity in all of us. And this is something I've written about at length in a lot of my research around these icons of American entrepreneurship. Curiosity drives innovation. It drives progress. It drives relationships. And you say, well, Nate, I'm not a very curious person. It's time to get curious. Because curiosity is non-negotiable for leadership. You must be curious. And by the way, sales is leadership, right? Because we are guiding someone to a better future, because they're here in your presence because they have a problem. They are in a current state that is not ideal. If they were ideal, they wouldn't need you. right? So it's because it's not an ideal state that you are in their company. And it's up to us to be curious enough to know about them in such a way that explores that curiosity. I love that. In fact, I remember I was interviewing a potential client in several years ago who had just retired from the movie industry, was a general manager for a movie chain. And we were talking about his role. And I said, "Hey, I got a question for you. I'm super curious about this." I said, you're probably gonna chuckle because you've probably been asked this 1,000 times, but why is movie popcorn so salty? And he starts laughing. He's like, "Nate, you know why? It's because you'll buy more soda." I was like, "Well, I just needed an affirmation." And so we started talking about my research, my dissertation, of course, partly on uh, Milton Hershey, Walt Disney, and Steve Jobs. And of course, the latter two were in the movie industry. Of course, Walt Disney through Disney Pictures and Steve Jobs through Pixar. And I had genuinely desired to explore that curiosity even further and say, I've got a podcast I'm just launching. And if it's in your wheelhouse, I'd love to have you on the show and talk about more about some aspects of the movies. Here's the thing, that thoughtful curiosity, number one, as you said, it's not counterfeit. I love that. But it connects us, it binds us, because human beings are communal creatures. We desire to share in experiences, and we desire to find that shared purpose as human beings. That's a beautiful place to explore. And to me, what a gift it is every day that you get to explore that.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is a lot of people um, have difficulty with it because they're shy or they're afraid they're going to offend. I'll give you a tip on that in a moment. But the key thing today is that when you demonstrate curiosity, and I talk about that a lot. In fact, one of the things I often say to people is when you're having a conversation with them, you can say, I'm in a financial service business and I love what I do because I help people get their financial life in balance. But before we get to all of that, I'm curious. Just use that phrase and then toss a question about their background, their life. But some people are very shy about it or they don't want to offend. Others often struggle with how can I ask a tough question empathetically because I don't want to be overly direct. And most people are somewhat overly direct. We get a little familiar with the person. We ask a direct question in a very direct way, a sensitive question. Some people today can get offended by it or they don't want to reveal, and then the relationship can suffer. And I had an epiphany moment on this in the middle of the night. So I was writing the book and I was working on a whole chapter on empathy. And I'm thinking, how can I help people to know the words to use to demonstrate empathy without having to stop and go, I need to be empathetic? How can they do that? And I woke up in the middle and I said, straight up in bed, and I just yelled. It's the predicate. And of course, woke my wife up. She's like, what is it? What? And I said, it's the predicate. The predicate's the problem. She said, what do you, and my dog, who thought, I guess, that I said predator, he's up, he's ready. Let's go get him, Dad. Get the 9mm and let's get out there. So anyhow, I was like, no, the predicate's in the wrong place. Give you an example. If you don't mind me asking, Nate, ooh, first thing people go, oh my God, what are they going to ask me now? If you don't mind me asking how much, you don't mind me, and we tested it in focus groups. We would say to people, and I'm going to ask the question the same way, two different ways. One, I'm going to say, if you don't mind me asking. The other, I'm going to ask and then put another predicate on the back. I never could get the first question out. I said, if you don't mind me asking, they did it. I'd say, folks, I need to finish the question. No, that's rude when you start that way. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're testing this. I want to put the predicate on the front and the predicate on the back. Okay, everybody got it? We got 32 people here. We're all adults. Let's go. Ready? If you don't mind me. Okay. It's just rude. I'll give you an example.
Well, and,
Some,
and and there's a reason I think that people say that's rude, in my opinion, and tell me if you found differently, that as soon as someone says, if you don't mind, you mind.
you mind.
Like it's
Of
like,
course.
okay, you're
Well,
I mean, my initial assumption is that you're gonna ask me something that I do mind, you're asking me permission to not have to mind.
correct. So on the other hand, if I were to say to you, how much money do you want to invest in this new house? If you don't mind me asking. And people go, well, I normally don't. And here it comes.
Mm-hmm.
I've got I don't know, hundreds of emails from people that saw that in the book, changed that predicate. They're like, Richard, tell me stuff they say I've never even told my family this.
Mm.
So empathy is a very powerful way. It's sort of seeing things from their point of view, as I say.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's for many people, empathy is difficult.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult. It was for me for many years. In fact, thank goodness for a wife who's helped me to become much more empathetic over the years. And today people say, I couldn't believe that you didn't have empathy, Nate. You know, you exude it. And I'm like, well, you can learn it. The point is that you can learn it.
Yes.
And especially, and you made a good point earlier, and I want the listener, I want our listener to really think about this. If you've been in a business for a number of years and you can become desensitized to how people feel about the challenges they're facing currently. And I'll give you an example in, the advisory work, the tax work that we've done for many years. Taxes hurt. Taxes are stressful for many people. If you've prepared 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 tax returns, you're likely going to have less sensitivity over time to how that felt. You might even completely have forgotten the feeling of getting a letter from the IRS, because you get a letter, you're like, okay, well, I'll just deal with the letter, right? Most people get a letter and they're like, I mean, they're in almost in, some people are in tears. I've had people say, well, I had to take a Valium before I called you because I needed to come down about 5 notches. People, there was someone who flew his Cessna into an IRS building because of the stress of taxes. So the empathy then is, hey, look, I know this can be very stressful and it hurts. This kind of stuff hurts. And start there, right? Start with the acknowledgement of how someone feels.
That's exactly right.
In the moment. And that's a good place. And again, just do it with just a little bit of decorum.
Well, the reason is because everybody loves to talk about security, economic security. We got a good price. But the bedrock of it all is emotional security. And if people have emotional security, they'll have a conversation about that which it is they want to accomplish. Otherwise, then it's all about price. And if it's all about price, it's a transaction. And so then people begin to chase the price as opposed to the relate. If you build a solid relationship based on thoughtfulness, kindness, empathy, and caring, what happens is no amount of marketing dollars is going to dislodge that relationship from you, because people know. I mean, we've interviewed thousands of people and they say, I just feel like I'm in the right place with the right provider. Well, how much are you paying? And, I really don't care. They just want to feel like they're in the right place.
Yeah.
With the right provider.
Well, and the kindness piece, just that second mark. I've always said it like this: if all things being equal, if you have the opportunity to do business with a jerk or someone who's kind, all things being equal, right? Everything else, you're always going to do business with the person who's kind with you. I mean, and somebody's going to say, "Oh, Nate, that might be, not me." That's fine, but the overwhelming majority of people are seeking someone who is just not rude, not condescending, not belittling, not critical. Someone who just say a few kind words. It doesn't have to be kind words, right, Richard? It could just be a smile.
Just be a smile makes a difference. And from a leadership perspective, I'm involved in a firm in Miami. In any case, we were having dinner at a restaurant, new restaurant in Miami Beach called Catch, CATCH. The original one is in New York. There's another one in LA, one in Las Vegas. Michelin quality food. I mean, it's incredible. Fourth night they're open. We're there. The place is packed. Fourth night they're open. It's weeks now, probably months to get in. The place runs like it's been there 100 years. So I know the GM, Carl. Came from New York, and I called him over and I said, Carl, how you open these restaurants, all different themes, unbelievable food. The place is packed and everything runs like a watch. How 4 nights? You're 4 nights with a brand new crew you didn't bring from New York. You came down with your server manager and that's it. How do you pull this off? And he said something very smart. basically said, we hire people that are nice. And he said, and we take care of the staff,
Mm,
and the staff takes care of the customer, and the customer takes care of the bills.
brilliant. Yeah. It really is that simple. Someone listening, it really is that simple. It's not complicated, and we shouldn't overcomplicate business. And now that doesn't make it easy, by the way, because it's not always easy to find that type of person. However, you've got to have your business model in place. You've got to have your mission right. You have to have your vision right. You have to have your core values dialed in. You have to be the kind of person that emulates those qualities because that's leadership.
Well, where it starts, and this is almost back to your first question. Truett Cathy was a very dear friend of mine in Chick-fil-A. You know, we traveled a lot, we did a lot of stuff together. And of course, Dan, his son, runs it now. And but everybody asks, how can Chick-fil-A do so well? Well, one of the things they do is that Truett had a vision, and his vision. I mean, every time we were going to go somewhere or be with any of the Chick-fil-A employees and others, he would always say, "Now remember, Richard, we want to remind him we're not in the chicken business. We want to remind him we're in the people business." And that has stood them very well. So the point is, though, that because that he had a vision for the experience he wanted people to have. Please, thank you, and my pleasure. Has had a profound impact. We worked with Freddy's Steakburger and Custard out of Wichita, and he had read my previous book, The Power of Why: Breaking Out in the Competitive Marketplace, the COO, and called me. I flew out and met with him, and they had great steak burgers. And he said, but I'm just concerned about, sir. So I did an audit of the stores, and I said, well, it's great that you serve craveable food in a fun environment, but what's missing is what's the experience going to be? So we modified that. Craveable food delivered with genuine hospitality in a fun environment. And then we began to hire people whose personality was they were pleasant and nice. 2 years later, won the National Restaurant Award for the best fast casual in the United States. They beat everybody, Culver's, Smashburger, everybody. Why? The number of people that were repeat buyers of their business was sky high because people went back, not just for the steak burger, which, by the way, no kidding, Nate, great, but by God, the experience was unbelievable.
Yeah. And I would submit, if you're listening, you say, Richard, Nate, I I don't have the resources to bring those kind of people on. I just gotta do what I gotta do. I'm going to tell you, you're just not going to get the optimal results. You're not going to get the results that are the high bar standard that you believe is possible. You have to you look. I would even submit, if I have to close my doors long enough so that I can have the right people in the right seat, I would even consider that, because I would rather build my reputation on the strength of the experience rather than saying, you know what, I cut a lot of corners, and I cut a lot of corners because I just needed to make my money. Let's do business. You know, if I'm a customer, I'm going to say, maybe I want to do business with someone else.
Well, the reason that people, and that does happen. I mean, there's lots of comment I could make there. You have to look at the lifetime value of a customer, and most people don't. They look at every sale as a transaction. When you make a when you make a sale, that's the beginning of something. It's not the end of something. And if you think about the lifetime value of that client, that customer, you invest the time to make a difference. I'll give you an example here in Sarasota, where I am today. I have a home here and a home out in the Hawaiian Islands, and because I work a lot in Asia as well, so it's halfway to everywhere. But next to the police station here, there is a donut shop called 50 Donuts, appropriate name, next to the police station. And their tagline is arrestingly good donuts, another good point. And I bought my first donut there August 4th, 2019. Now you say, well, how in the world would you know that? This is 2024. Because every August 4th, I get a text from them. Congratulations as a loyal squad member. Here's $5 off your next order of donuts. And I'm not a big donut guy, but here's a company that sells donuts. Nate, let's be clear here. We're selling a $2 donut, and they can cultivate a relationship with me. and you're servicing my air conditioner, you're selling me a car, you're taking care of my taxes, you're managing my money, and I haven't even heard from you. I mean, let's just, it's easy to make excuses about, well, we can't find good people, et cetera. You got to train people, Chick-fil-A, what do? They train them. Thank you, my pleasure. That's the
Yeah.
difference. It makes all the difference in the world. And they don't advertise chicken. If you look at Chick-fil-A's ads, what do they advertise? People sitting on a couch talking about the experience they had
That's
at
right.
Chick-fil-A.
That's right. That's so important. And even in our businesses, if you were to ever walk around our company, and I'm so thankful for great people. And if you've listened to the show, you'll have heard me talk about this. When I go around, I say, "What business are we in?" And our people don't say we're in the tax, accounting, and advisory business. They say we're in the love business. That is the business we're in because people need love in this crazy, hectic world of their financial picture. And if we're not giving enough love, turn it up, because not every business is perfect. And so you learn from that. At the same time, I've found that when we identify what our client needs are and we satisfy those needs, this, Richard, they are connected to us because they're part of our success. We are successful together. And you talked about that, that annual message of, hey, you know what, we've been together. On our annual flyer, we put on a flyer celebrating and then the number of years that we've been serving, being blessed to serve. And so many of our clients we want them to recognize you're part of this celebration. Without you, this doesn't happen. And so for our clients, so we have some clients who have been with us since day one. In February of 2025, it will be 30 wonderful years. And there are clients in day 2 and day 5 and day 10, and they're all equally important. However, the ones who truly identify with that and value that, they make sure to let it be known. Hey, I've been with you since the beginning. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to keep doing this together.
Well, what you realize, and I think everybody that's listening to this, if this is of interest to you, I think that I can just tell you from experience that if you elevate the experience with people and are thoughtful, kind, and caring and empathetic, they're going to become delighted advocates for your business. Some people call them brand ambassadors. Use any phrase you want. But, the marketplace has shifted so dramatically. Today, we talk about influencers. And some of the most powerful influencers are the people that are in other people's networks. As an example, if I belong to a country club, other people in that country club, I might ask them a question, who should I use for blank? And if your name comes up in a positive light, that influences my ability to say, yes, I think I'll inquire there. And it used to be that advertising drove the business. Now it's word of mouth and experience is what's driving the business. It's other people telling other people what a great job you've done, and this is key on their behalf. When you talk to somebody, say, here's what we're going to do on your behalf. If I called in and said, okay, now I've got a couple of questions about this, and this, say, okay, great. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the answers, and this is what I'm going to do on your behalf. And then you set a time for us to talk again, because it really demonstrates that you're there for them. And some of the things you can do is you might say, well, to your point about I can't afford to hire. No, but you can change the way you address people. I mean, look at your database. Are you capturing the names of your customers? If her name is Elizabeth, does she go by Betty, Beth, Elizabeth, or Liz? Or like my good friend in Atlanta, whose name is Elizabeth, but she goes by Lolly because her grandfather called her Lolly because she loved lollipops. And she's 80 something years old. And if you call her anything but Lolly, she doesn't respond. So, Dave might like David. Nate might be Nathan. My first initial is C. I get a lot of emails, dear C. I don't open those. T. Boone Pickens was a friend of mine. He never went by T. So these are little things you can do when you send your emails out. Don't say best. That's the number one dislike. We interview people who say, which do you like the most? The one they hate was best. Somebody would send their email, best Richard. They would like, that is so rude. Best what? What does that mean? It means nothing. It's institutional. What else is institutional? Sincerely yours. It's almost as bad. Well, what would you like? How about warm regards or kindest regards? Oh, So you mean to tell me if I change two words, it can have a deeper level of emotional connection? I don't know. Sounds like it. Let's try that. So what does that cost? I could go with nothing. It'd be a good point. Don't send me an email say you're following up with me. I mean, I don't want to hear. What do you mean you're following up? What? To see if I made a decision? Nate, if I'd made a decision, I would have already called you.
That's right.
Why don't you send me an email? Say, hey, Richard, I've identified 3 additional steps to help you get that house that we were looking at 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Let's have a good conversation. Tell me that you've been thinking about me and helping me move forward. Yeah, well, people said they can't afford this air conditioning system. I mean, what would I tell them is the next step? Well, your next step might be, I've identified this is really the best system for you. But let's have a conversation. I've identified a couple of different steps we could take to perhaps keep you cool this summer. And what do people do? Then they say that you're seeing them, you're on their side of the table, you're doing something on, quote, their behalf.
That's right.
Those are just a couple of, I mean, there's 100 of them in the book, but those are things people said to us.
And providing value. Listen, this book is going to be just hot. 100 proven ways to acquire and keep clients for life. I can't wait to share it on the podcast and share it on our social media to get the word out, to really focus on the heart, really the heart of the heartbeat, if you will, of our business, and that's our customer.
Exactly right. Thank you, Nate. It's been a
Thanks,
blessing to
Richard.
be with you.
You,
If people want to go to the website, I've got about 20 or 30 videos. I put up videos all the time. They're free.
yeah,
You can go 2-minute little vignettes. You can show at sales meetings and your true staff. Just go to Richard Weylman, WEYLMAN.com, WEYLMAN.com. And of course, I speak at conferences. And if I can help you in some way, feel welcome to reach out.
we will
Feel
definitely
free. Always feel welcome, not feel free.
act welcome. I like that. I like the terminology. You're such a student of the forming and the shaping of your words so that they're impactful. They're just not sent out into the ether without true thoughtfulness and discernment. And so I'm going to ask you to shape a few more words as we close here.
Yeah.
And I like to ask you from time to time, when time allows, our guests to think about for just a brief moment the end of the journey, if you will, where you're on the great summit of life, and you've seen all that you've done. You've seen all the people who you've impacted and affected, and you've got those that all in view. I'm gonna ask you a question. When you're on that great summit, what would you have liked others to have said about you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. As you know, it is. I would say that, I mean, I suppose off the top of my head, it was, and I get emails from people, they say, you helped me find the path. You helped me find the path to fill in the blank, to building a business. You helped me find the path to dealing with this issue. And the gift that God's given me is the gift of discernment. I mean, I have CEOs that call me that have spent millions of dollars on a project, and in just a very few discussions, I'm able to see the issue. I can't explain that. It's just how it is. So, and I've had, I mean, people whose name you would know, even entertainers that have said to me in private, they'll say, Richard, I was really stuck. And then we had a conversation and it was like, you showed me the path. You showed me how to take the next step. And, I was an orphan. My mother died when I was 5. My dad died when I was 6. I lived in 19 foster homes, went to 11 different schools. And so, with all of that background and the life experience, it really helped me to realize that it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And, you have to, I read a scripture when I was a little kid. It said, God is the father of the fatherless. So I figured I'm way ahead of most people. So I just never occurred to me I was supposed to be a victim of that. And I think that perhaps is one of the things that people also say is that you help me to stay focused on the future, not the past.
Well, you are on your way, my friend. And I'd love to have you back and share more about your story and what happens to you is important, but much of greater value is what happens through you, and you're demonstrating that every day, and the world is a better place because of it. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you.